Hello, readers. This is Justin's 52 Books, where I talk about my selections for the 52 Book Club's 2022 Reading Challenge. This is week 21, and I'm talking about Prompt 31, a technology-themed book. My choice for this week is R.U.R, Rossum's Universal Robots by Karel Čapek, and that was written in 1920. First off, before I say anything more, I don't speak Czech, so if I'm saying Kepek or however you say his name wrong, I apologize. I'm going to go with Čapek because that's what Google Translate told me. I'm a pretty heavy science fiction reader, so this prompt was never going to be a problem for me. But that being said, I wanted to take advantage and full advantage of the prompt and even the reading challenge and really flex that reading something new muscle. And with that in mind, I turned to a 100-year-old play. R.U.R, or Rossum's Universal Robots, I'd say is most well known for its coinage of the term robot, which Čapek actually has credited to his brother Joseph, and has a rich, from my studying of it at least, has a rich Czech and Slavic etymology, essentially stretching back to the word orbata, which translates roughly to work, hard work, and obligatory work for the king. And the robots are truly what we think of today when we think of science fiction robots, although perhaps Android would make a little more sense to those of us who are inclined to make those distinctions, as the robots take on many of the aspects of humans. I'm sure you can find discourse at length on the difference between robots and androids on YouTube. So if you're into that, go ahead, because I don't really care about those distinctions. Now, what interests me is what Čapek was getting at in introducing these automated people into the world through his play R.U.R. And it really isn't a science fiction purpose at all. Or maybe it is the most science fiction purpose there can be. Just like the robot droid distinction, it kind of depends on what you think of when it comes to the distinctions of science fiction. There are those who are into science fiction for the spaceships and the cosmic adventure and the moral clarity. And there are those of us who are into science fiction for the what ifs, the what abouts, and the most important question of all, why? And the answer may or may not be 42, depending on what you're reading that week. Most readers of science fiction are smart enough to know that there's no real answer to that. But that's what R.U.R is, an examination of what if the world did away with the work of man, or at least for man. And then follow-on questions from that fall out. What about those whose work allow us our lifestyles? And ultimately, what do workers need work for, and what do us as consumers need workers for? Obviously, that's a lot of questions and a lot of weight to put on a silly little play. But the play does end, spoiler alert, with pretty much the complete obliteration of mankind. So yeah, heavy stuff. Essentially, what we have with R.U.R are characters who act as surrogates for what Čapek saw as various ideologies competing for importance in his day. And it's just as relevant now as it was then. You have business interests, institutional interests, development interests, and the interests of scientific advances. And they're all represented by different characters in the play. And before you get too haughty that your ideologies and my ideologies in the rights and interests of mankind get a free pass, the left is represented here as well. She's even scornfully referred to as Helena Glory. That's her name in the play. Yes, all the characters in R.U.R essentially conspire, or if that's too harsh a phrase, convince each other of their motives and the outcomes when it comes to the use of robots to take over the work of the world. And then the follow-on war of the world. And as happens when you take over the work and the war of the world, it is to take over the world. And thus you see a trope born. If you're a robot, what do you need people for? Hey, let's kill all the people. It was really interesting to me to see the birth of the robot trope being born, almost fully formed in R.U.R. And even at the end, after the robots have killed all the people and they don't know how to replicate themselves, and all hope is lost, or at least that's how it seems. And you can read the story to see the real ending. But ultimately, and here's what I really love about Čapek's point, I think, it's that these ideologies are to blame, and the fundamental adherence to those ideologies. The robots are just a metaphor, and it's people's inflexibility and utter lack of doubt in themselves or their ideas that drive themselves and thus all of us to these extremes. That fact is cemented, at least was cemented for me, when I was searching for other works of Karel Čapek on the Internet Archive and found the Karel Čapek Reader, entitled Toward the Radical Center. I think it may have found a guiding light here, which makes sense, as the whole time I was reading R.U.R, it kept reminding me of the other great champions of the working man, at least in my past and in musical tastes. D. Boone and Mike Watt from the Minutemen, who's in their song, Maybe Partying Will Help, they mentioned, what of the people who don't have what I ain't got? Are they victims of my leisure? Thanks for watching me talk about my thoughts on R.U.R, Rossum's Universal Robots by Karel Čapek. This has been week 21 of Justin's 52 books, and I was talking about prompt 31, a technology-themed book. For more information on the 52 Book Club's 2022 Reading Challenge, you can check them out on their website, the52bookclub.com. You can check them out on Goodreads and Facebook. You can also check me out on Goodreads and Storygraph. I hope to see you next week for prompt 39, a middle grade book. Until then, happy reading.